So we're back with Douglas Macgregor speaking on Ukraine, Russia. What's happening? Where's this going? It's not looking promising, but let's get into it.
To the Russian population in Moldova, which I'm sure he will, then the question is, what are the Europeans really going to do? And the truth is, they're not capable of doing much. You and I know that. But the Russians have been told otherwise. Now, what do I mean? From the very beginning, when you saw these fools in Ukraine run around with Nazi symbols on their uniforms, that was a red flag for the Russians. And that was something that anybody in Russia could point to as evidence for something that was wrong and had to be destroyed. Now it's gotten worse. And I would argue it's worse because you have European leaders like this man, Merz, who makes extremely dangerous, incautious remarks, along with his defense minister, von der Leyen, and others, about how Germany is going to build up into some giant military power with the obvious purpose of threatening Russia. You have similar statements coming out of other European countries and leaders. I don't know what the new Starmer Light will be like. I'm sure we'll get another version of Starmer, only less impressive, if that's possible. Macron is still with us. These people are all saying ridiculous things about Europe's potential to defeat and destroy Russia. If you're sitting in Russia and you're listening to this, and this material is, this material is being transmitted through the Russian media to the Russian people. It's not being censored. It's not being modified. It's being transmitted. What does the average Russian conclude? It's 1941 again. Here we go again, another European invasion of Russia. Now, you and I know that's absurd. You could take the entire British army, French army, whatever it passes for a German army. Throw in the Danes, the Norwegians. What are they going to do? Where are they going to go? They couldn't even defend the Baltic littoral. They couldn't defend Western Ukraine. Who are we kidding? So what are you talking about? It's nonsense, but it's dangerous, and it's eliciting a very dangerous response from Russia. People don't seem to understand that President Putin doesn't have to create a boogeyman for the Russians to fear. We've done that for him, and we continue to do it. So it's very easy for him to announce new measures, expansion of reserves. They've already got a Russian army today that's well over 1 million. It's brilliantly organized, well-equipped, well-trained. I think it's well-led. I think many of the weak links in the chain of the officer corps and the senior ranks have been eliminated. If you were going to pick a time and a place to fight the Russians, this is a bad one. Don't do it. You're stupid to even consider it. So I think Putin knows all of these things. I think he's still going to move very methodically because that's his nature. But I think Odessa is going to come under attack and it's going to be seized. Now, can he do more than that? Yes, he probably can. Will he? I don't know. I have listened to voices in Russia say this will not end until we are in Kiev and we absolutely eliminate this regime. I think a lot of people have reached that conclusion.
And you can't blame them, like. It's like when he's speaking on Europe. Who's going to go and fight? Our military, is piss poor, like. No one wants to go and join them. No one wants to fight for them. And Andy Burnham, when he gets in, what's his first thing he's going to do? He's going to go to Israel and kiss the wall. It's just that simple, like. In America, I've been pushing the West and funding the West, just like our taxpayers are funding, sending all these weapon systems to Ukraine. It needs to stop, like.
That's about as crazy as, here's $90 billion, now go win your war in Ukraine. It's absurd. We know that everything that goes to Ukraine, about 50% of it, just disappears into corruption, the black hole of corruption.
That's the same as when the CIA and ISI were funding the Mujahideen, and Saudi were also doubling what the CIA were giving. It just gets sold on the black market because you're giving it to mercenaries, people who, like you say, Ukraine are finding troops from God knows where. because they've ran through all the Ukrainian men. They're dragging any of the fight they can find that look fighting age off the streets. It's crazy.
But what happens to the rest of it? Well, a lot of it is sold off. I mean, the Ukrainians have been furnishing Colombia and Venezuela and Mexico cartels with all sorts of interesting equipment and capabilities that were given to them by Europeans and by us. You would think President Trump is aware of that. I don't know if anybody ever tells him that. I don't know if he were told that he'd believe it. Who knows? But there is no strategic framework. There is no end state. It's all about how do we stay on top? In other words, how do we remain the world's financial hegemon and military hegemon? Well, we've just discovered that we are not the world's military hegemon. We've been defeated unambiguously. Instead of recognizing that and saying, oh, it's time to step back and reconsider what we're doing, he's talking about doubling down again. It's worse than insane. So when you see all these globalists that come out of the woodwork, I listened to Neil Ferguson the other day. Oh, Ukraine is now in a position where it could strike back and win. I don't know of anyone who is sane, who has visited Ukraine, who thinks Ukraine has a snowball's chance in hell of winning a war against Russia. What is much more likely now is that that Putin finally says that's enough, no more. And remember, he's in a tough position. When I speak about Russia, I've always had people say, well, Macgregor, sure, you say this, the Russians can do this. You say the Russians are doing that. Well, if they can do all those things, why haven't they already won? Why haven't they crossed the river? Why haven't they entered Kiev? Why haven't they just marched west? In other words, nobody believes you until it's done. The burden of proof is on Russia right now to prove that it can do what it can. There's no thinking that says, listen, let's sit down. Let's bring this to an end quickly. This has gone on long enough. This is not in the interest of Europe, not in the interest of Ukraine, certainly not in the interest of Russia or the United States. So how do we end this? That should be the question. No one is talking like that.
And they're not. All the war hawks and neocons, like I just seen something on X before, Boris Johnson crawled out of the woodwork to condemn Russia and praise Ukraine, saying Ukraine are going to finish the job. It's nonsense, man. But then they forget about the boarding school that was hit and the young girls that died, the terrorist attack. Honestly, the mainstream media, blatant lies. Blatant. But how are Ukraine? How will this end for Zelensky? We'll find out, won't we?
Flattered by the thought that he is a great man who can meddle and make decisions and move the chess pieces. Bad business.
Well, as we see, there's an energy crisis, of course, in Ukraine. There's a manpower crisis. We see some fracture along the front lines, especially Zaporizhia is becoming a key problem now for Ukraine. And at the midst of this, Zelensky suggested that they might attack Belarus as well. How do you make sense of this? Is this just bluster to create some headlines in NATO to show that Ukraine is winning again, or do you think they could actually go this way? Because I would think that the Russian response would be quite fierce if, it would definitely change the dynamic of the war.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Zelensky is the captain of a sinking ship. The waves are lapping over the decks. He's going under. So what can he do to survive? Well, the last thing he's going to do is make peace. The last thing he's going to do is suggest any sort of arrangement which would marginalize him and his government. In fact, if you look at Israel right now, Israel's kind of in a similar position, although people in the West don't know it. The situation inside Israel is terrible. It's terrible inside Ukraine. There are millions of Ukrainians who are sick to death of this war. They would love to get rid of Zelensky. If you're closer to it than I am, so you get to talk to journalists that go over there frequently. I get to talk to a few Germans from time to time who are willing to share their impressions, but my impression based on what they report is that Western Ukraine is a disaster, and the people there are sick to death of this whole thing, want nothing to do with it. So what do? You do what Netanyahu is doing. Netanyahu says, we will never leave Lebanon. He tells the army to dig in, set up checkpoints, build strong points. You know, when you're failing badly, you don't admit that you're failing badly. That's not what you do. You strike back with whatever you've got left until finally you go under completely. And I think that's where Ukraine is headed. Unfortunately, I think that's where the Israelis are headed too.
And this is the thing, like, it's not going to end good. I don't know why America are so obsessed with pushing this war. They're so scared. They've got Putin phobia. Putin just wants to do business with Europe, man. The energy crisis currently going on in the Straits of Hormuz. We could have cheap energy from Russia. The elites and the Zionists hate the thought of anyone else making money. They want it all. And this is the reason why there's endless wars all the time. It takes 5 minutes research. It's pathetic. Pathetic.
Army is at your gates, and then people finally wise up and then want to negotiate. And that may be what happens. You'll end up with Russian forces that strike back violently and decisively. I hope not, but how else do you end this thing? Because if there's no strategy, how can there be diplomacy? What do you tell the diplomat? You know, we want you to go meet with, say go meet with the Russians in Poltava. Sit down there. See if you can work out a solution. The diplomat says, well, what do you want to achieve? What's the goal? What's the end state? Nobody knows. Well, we want to make sure that we look victorious and the enemy looks feeble. That's what it's all about. It's optics. With Trump, it's optics. That's it. That's all there is. There's nothing else. So what are the Europeans going to do? They're trying to exploit the optics, the desire for optics, by creating the myth that Ukraine is the phoenix rising from the ashes thanks to drones, and that the world will change. So please give us more money so that we can go out and wage more war and save you in the West from the inevitable invasion that is coming from Moscow. It's all crap. Let's be frank. I hate to be so coarse at this point, but you and I and a lot of others have been talking about this for a long time. People don't listen to us. They listen to the damn leaders that they've got in power who are selling them out every day. And until they wake up and conclude that they've got the wrong people in power, not much is going to change.
Well, not much will change. And the inequality between the have and the have-nots is becoming staggering. All the younger generations can't get on the property ladder, struggling to pay bills, worse off than their parents for the first time in history. But yet we've got all this money for endless war. It's bullshit. It is nonsense, like Douglas Macgregor says. Nonsense. And there, like it says, former advisor to the Secretary of Defence, you've got the likes of him, Jeffrey Sachs, people who know geopolitics inside out, know the regions inside out. We need to wake up and do better, like. But I just thought I would share that one. So that's it for now.